And we're back once again only on its last call. Last call to you, alcohol only on the lastcallpodcast.com. And joining me here, well, this gentleman here is one of the, if you don't know him, you're going to know him soon because he is killing it with his Substack, with his NFL reporting. A lot of people are high on this man as he, well, covers not just the NFL and the Vikings and the Bucs, but he is the lead writer for all of that, and the former 33rd team in PFN and Fansided. I give you NFL Insider Extraordinaire. I give you it's Andrew Harbaugh. So, Andrew, let's start off here with it's. This is the one thing that if you are a Jet, if you're a Chief, if you are even a Patriot, you can all agree on. This refereeing is just god awful. I don't even know how to explain it, but I'll try. What the hell is going on? Why is this? Why is it so bad? And how did we get to this point?
I think it comes down to, and I was thinking about this question beforehand when you told me what we were going to talk about, and I think it ironically can kind of go back to baseball a little bit, where the NFL has certainly made some progress and baseball has made progress as well. Um, Baseball has the robot umpires in the minor leagues, and they're able to correct errors on the fly. And in the majors, you still have these horrific incidences of balls that are called strikes, strikes that are called balls, and like they're not even close. And in the NFL, you're having it where the tush push is the easiest example, where it's a false start almost every time. And most recently, from the game I was covering on Monday night, the Lions and Bucks game, like I can't even remember the exact phrase the ref was using, that Dan Campbell kept challenging the ball. But for a ref to say after a second look, like you get one look at it. Like I don't understand how you can go to look for one thing and then notice something else and be like, well, while I was looking at this, I noticed this. So, and I mentioned it to a buddies of mine because we were talking about it. I said, I'm pretty sure the NBA has a rule against that exact thing. And ironically, I think the NBA has one of the better reffing situations because they have so many things that can get reviewed. Um, I think it's one of those things like baseball, like the NFL, where they just are so afraid of being replaced. I think the robotic chain gang was the first thing that really has them on edge. And I think, I don't want to say they're acting with a superiority complex, but I definitely think they're reffing this year with a chip on their shoulder, and they're kind of trying to reaffirm everyone that, hey, we're in charge. But at the same time, they're making an awful lot of glaring mistakes that are not helping their case at all.
Like you go back to the Chiefs Lions game, and I'm a Chiefs fan, and even then I was getting pissed at the refs because you had the Lions touchdown, which was a cute, gadget play, gets called a touchdown. Then they wait forever. Then they throw a flag. Now it's illegal procedure. And you knew, and you saw Dan Campbell, I think, ready to choke somebody out because he had gone over to them saying, "Hey, look, this is what we're gonna do. Don't tell anybody, but look, this is what the play is gonna be." And the referees just went, sort of nodded. According to him, everything was kosher. And then it's like, no, it's wrong. Actually, we just, and then they throw a flag. It happened in the Jaguars Chiefs game where you had Mahomes having to run over to them and explain, no, this is what the rule is when they're about to call. Like they almost are incompetent now, where it's like, do you know what you're going to call, or is this now we're just let's make it up as we go along? Because that's how fans feel now. Like I'll just make it up as we go along here, and a catch is not a catch, but it's a catch. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, and I think too, just another game I covered, like the Vikings against the Eagles. Vikings fans were upset with it, and it's one of those things where I'm not a fan of either team that I cover, so I get to be a little bit more objective. Not saying that people are upset with refs and their fans, like that's not saying you're not being objective. There's legitimate gripes across the board. But for the Vikings, like Hawkinson had a touchdown catch that was called a touchdown, and then it was not. And he was complaining that two refs told him it was good, but then the review said it wasn't. So that's an example of where I think the refs on the field are doing an injustice to the player in that sense and the fans, because then Hawkinson afterwards is saying, like, yeah, well, they told me it was good and then they decided to overturn it. Well, the point of a review in that instance is to get the call right. And if I don't know if you saw the catch I'm talking about, like
I did, and
it came out like there was no question about it that what he didn't complete the catch. The ball hit the front of the ball, hit the ground when he hit the ground, and then the ball came out as he rolled over. So like I had no issues with that being overturned. And again, the refs were the focus of that thing, especially in a close game that ended up coming down to one score. There was some other calls in that game. There was a holding call on Jalen Carter between Blake Brandel and him. And but yeah, there's just I think the refs are trying to protect themselves and they have a union and everything like that. And they don't want to be replaced. And I don't think they can be, but I definitely think it's one of those things where when you have social media who's holding people accountable for different things, and you've got 10,000 different reviews being done both in the stadium and on TV, you can't hide behind, oh, well, we missed that. Like, there's no excuse to miss these things anymore. And I think it's one of those things where they just have to swallow their pride. And I think some behind home plate umpires have not done a good job of that, but I think positional or bases, yeah, excuse me, base umpires have done a better job of that, where they're able to review calls, the base paths and stuff like that, and it's been less of a big stink. I think the sooner the refs are able to accept, like, hey, if we can get a quick review done on impactful penalties, like even if it's under 2 minutes, I would say, or anything that's affecting a scoring play. I'm not saying every single play, because at that point you're going to have 5-hour games and nobody wants that, whether you're getting every call right or not. But there's definitely some negotiations I think that need to be done between the NFL and the referee union to close the gap on things. Because, like you said, fans, no matter who you root for, someone's getting the raw end of the stick each week. And like I said, I covered two different teams and I got to see two different examples of it on Sunday and Monday.
does the league need to sort of dumb things down? Because I've heard this from Albert Breer that you have the lawyers and the managers who are always worried about social media and going, oh, we got this wrong. Fans are upset, so they try to interfere. You have a competition committee, which always seems to make new rules, and we got to put this in, put that in. Hey, you can't block past two or 3 yards. Like, at what point is either Roger Goodell or the owners to get together and go, look, there's too many freaking rules in this goddamn rule book. We need to like cut half of them, in half and just let the chips fall where they may. Because the referees now seem to be lost on half these damn calls.
I think it's one of those things where I not to put cold water on this, I don't think anything is going to change from the NFL and the owner's perspective. I think it would take the players union to step up and say something, because the owners and Goodell and them, they're making money hand over fist at this point, no matter what happens. Like, um, not to get on this topic, and I'm not picking a side on this whatsoever. Like, I love every time something controversial happens, like say Bad Bunny gets the halftime show and people are saying we're not going to watch the Super Bowl. Like, that's fine and dandy. Like last year, I shared it. Like, people were like, Kendrick Lamar's the halftime show. We're not going to watch it because the product's not going to be good. Well, still 200 some million people still tune in. Like, the NFL owns a day of the week. Like, the movie Concussion said that, and that has stuck with me. And it could not be more true. Like, they own a day of the week that previously was owned by religion. So like football has surpassed that at this point. And I think it's one of those things where the owners, they're getting paid no matter what. Goodell's going to make his money no matter what. And I think Goodell cares more about the product than maybe the owners do for the most part, or the majority of them. Um, there's a handful of owners who are still really invested in how things are on the field in terms of appearances. But I think it's going to come down to the players' unions stepping up. And obviously, they've had a lot of turnover and controversial stuff in their own right, that there's not enough time in the world to dive into. Pablo Torre had to split it up into several podcasts. But I think once they get their stuff sorted out in the players' union, I think that is something that is addressed very quickly at their next negotiation where they try to get that in alignment, because it's going to come down to the players. It's not going to come down to the front office, ownership, or commissioner. It's going to be the players who make a big stink about it. And that's when the league and the referees will have to listen.
Speaking of listening, I think everybody who the owner should listen to this here. The players want Mike McDaniel gone. I think Mike McDaniel looks like he wants to be gone. The fans want him gone. Yet he's still there. Why is he still there? I mean, you figured, okay, they're 1-6. His team has just gotten their doors, blown off by the Dolphins. Even Tua's done the heel turn and turned on McDaniel. Like, I get it. Nobody likes to pay coaches when they fire them because, like, oh God, I'm spending money on somebody who's not working for me. But if you're Stephen Ross, like, why are you still keeping this when nobody wants to have him there? He doesn't want to be there. The players don't want him there. The fans don't want him there. This thing is it's like just pull mercy and just fire Mike McDaniel. But he's still there as of this week.
Yeah, I was looking at I feel like last week he could have been fired. The week before he could have been fired. And it seems like a foregone conclusion. And that being said, I think someone's going to throw him a lot of money to be an offensive coordinator, and I think he's going to do really good in that role again. It's one of those things where not everyone is built to lead a team, but I think he can be one of the best coordinators of football. Looking at their schedule, I think the only two things coming up, because it's one of those things where usually teams try to schedule firings around longer weeks. They play the Falcons this week, and then they play the Ravens on a short week on the 30th. So not this Thursday, but following Thursday. So a week from tomorrow. I think if they lose both those games, especially considering that the Ravens should have Lamar Jackson back by then, I think a longer break between then and week 10, like I think it's a 10-day stretch for them, might be enough for them to kind of do a hiring change. If not, their bye week's not till week 12. And I think if he makes it that far, I think he just keeps the job the rest of the year, as insane as that sounds. I do think it's one of those things where it's either he gets fired after the Ravens game because if it's a longer week from the Thursday night game, or he somehow survives the season and he's just part of Black Monday that comes after the season. But yeah, no, it seems like it's a foregone conclusion. It's one of those things where Ross is very quiet with the media, and I think also too he's had enough experiences with coaches, assistant coaches. Just there's been so much turnover with the Dolphins, and he's experienced it. So I don't think he wants to draw any more attention to a bad situation that's already being put under the spotlight. But yeah, I think that's where the two instances where there could be a firing.
Where did it go wrong? I mean, because when he first came, they went 9-8, 11-6. Made the playoffs. He's the offensive, quirky guru that everybody wants to play with. I mean, is it him? Is it Chris Greer? Is it a combination of both? Like, how did it get this bad so quickly? And how do the Dolphins fix it?
I do think it's more so Chris Greer than it is McDaniel. Like I think McDaniel's a good coach. I think Greer didn't do him any favors in terms of roster building and specifically how he ended up shelling out contracts. Like the Hill deal, especially for how old he was getting, is not going to age well. The Tua deal is going to turn out to be a gross overpay. You've got some other guys on defense that deserve to be paid, and they're not going to be, it seems like. Injuries have really hampered them. Like Jalen Phillips should be a multiple time all pro at this point, and his knee just seems to keep exploding, unfortunately. Or his Achilles, just one of the two. So I think it's a combination of several things for them between the injuries. I think Chris Greer's done a worse job than Mike McDaniel has, but I also think Mike McDaniel's quirkiness is maybe just not resonating as much anymore. I think that message and energy was really exuberant in the beginning. Like it's funny. I have a buddy of mine, Dante Colonelli, works for Sports Illustrated and covers the Dolphins. And I told him I wanted to do my own little research a couple weeks ago, and I went back and I watched the Hard Knocks in season with the Dolphins, and the energy was insane then. Like it was, I remember thinking, okay, McDaniel's my favorite coach. I remember thinking, there's no way this guy doesn't win here. Like he had all the energy and momentum in the world, and it was just injuries in that season derailed them. And it seems like they never really got their footing back. So I think it was one of those things where when it rained, it poured for them. And unfortunately, McDaniel didn't have a raincoat to handle the situation.
Rumors are that Anthony Weaver will be the guy who takes over. And the Dolphins love my. He fits the bill in what we want now, it seems, in current coaches. He's a huge, imposing guy, 6'3", 290, played for the Ravens and the Texans. He's worked his way up, defensive coordinator in Houston, defensive assistant head coach and line coach in Baltimore, took over as defensive coordinator for Miami. How much does that for them change? Like, okay, we don't want to trade away everybody because we don't want to give Weaver a chance and have a depleted roster. Like, how do they swing this? When they fire McDaniel, do they do a fire sale also, or do they give Weaver a chance to show? All right, look, we'll give you somewhat of a half decent roster, I guess. We'll see what you can do.
I am in the rare instance of if you're going to fire a coach, clearly something's going wrong, especially in the NFL, because that means you're going to pay someone not to work for you. I think at that point, if you've got aging assets or assets on a 1 year deal that are going to be free agents, it drives me nuts when you know you're not going to bring someone back or they're not going to want to come back and you get nothing for them. So I'm not saying they necessarily have a fire sale, but I definitely think there's some pieces there between Phillips, Chubb, uh, maybe not Waddle. I see Waddle brought up a lot. I think Waddle still has some purpose there. Um, I think getting something for those guys, load up, get somewhere between 10, 12 draft picks in that next class. Give your next GM, because honestly, Chris Greer is probably going to be gone too. You don't get to hire several coaches and stick around. Give your next GM a plethora of picks to kind of get his own guys in. And like I am a big fan of Anthony Weaver. I thought uh, last year he could have been a head coaching candidate. This year the defense isn't playing well. I don't think that's necessarily all him. Um, but no, I think there's a double-edged sword where you can trade away guys and plan for the future, but you can also let Weaver showcase himself as someone who can get the most out of guys. And that is something you want in a head coach where um, the Dolphins have some young players and people they want to maximize. Let Weaver see what he can get out of them. And that is something that owners want to see. So I think Weaver could still show himself even if there is a fire sale. But I also, like I said, I think regardless, the Dolphins need to trade some pieces away and make sure they have the draft capital to make an impact next year for whoever their GM is.
So this is near and dear to your heart. The Minnesota Vikings and their quarterback sort of, not gonna call it problem, but issues. They bet the farm on JJ McCarthy. I get it. He came out of college undefeated, Michigan. He had the swagger. I'm guessing O'Connell fell in love with him and said, "Hey, this is going to be my next future QB. He is everything I want. He is the blue chip." And then McCarthy got hurt. Sam Darnold tore up the league, and they made the decision to still part ways with Shane O'Donnell, still part ways with Daniel Jones. They didn't want to bring in, Aaron Rodgers. I understand why. And unfortunately, now we're in this whole pickle. Who's to blame? What should they have done? Hindsight being 2020, or is this one of those things where this is just bad luck and nobody could have seen this coming, and there wasn't really a perfect answer considering what you wanted to do?
I think it's a couple things. I think one is I think they're obviously heavily invested in JJ McCarthy. Um, that quarterback class, obviously May's been a hit, Jane Daniels was a hit, and Caleb Williams is proving to be something with Ben Johnson now. Um, Michael Penix went right before McCarthy, and he's flashed at moments. And McCarthy has only played in, I think I wrote it the other day. I think it was 2 out of 24 games he would have been able to play in the last 2 years, between the sprained ankle and the torn meniscus he had. And obviously, your best ability is availability. And obviously, somebody who's young like that doesn't have an injury history. You think, okay, he's going to be fine. And obviously, too, you had Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones there, who, apart from, I mean, Daniel Jones had one good year in New York, and then he came and didn't do anything in Minnesota. He just sat there and kind of learned with McCarthy, good Lord, Kevin O'Connell, and Darnold starting there. And Darnold obviously had a career renaissance and now got a six or $100 million contract in Seattle, and he's playing to that deal. And Daniel Jones is overplaying his deal in Indianapolis, and Aaron Rodgers is playing really well in his last year in Pittsburgh. And I think that's where the issues arise. Like, I am not on stay the course of McCarthy as hard as others. Like, um, like I love my buddy Thor, Nystrom. He is. I'm pretty sure if there was a bus coming and it was going to hit McCarthy, I'm pretty sure Thor would throw himself in front of it. And I say that with all love. And but and I think the franchise is treating McCarthy the same way. But at the same time, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has not had the greatest draft history. And I'm not saying, like, he's never had to draft a quarterback, and I'm not saying that McCarthy's going to be a bust or anything. But I think to have no panic at all is naive if you're a Vikings fan. I don't think this is a soft benching as anyone has expressed, or Football Docs said it was McCarthy hiding behind his injury. I think that's one of the more asinine things I've ever heard. And I think it's one of those things where, because everyone else was playing so well that left, um, Wentz had mild success. I think him having a horrible game on Sunday um, really helped McCarthy out. Um, I don't think they want to stick with Wentz. I really don't. I think they just want to see what they've got in McCarthy at this point. Um, you've got all these skill players around him: Jordan Mason, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. The offensive line, when healthy, is great. And that's something else too that people, I think, forget about too, is not to make excuses for McCarthy after I just said I'm not sold on him. But part of the reason I'm not entirely in or out is haven't seen him with a complete wide receiver group. Like, he didn't have Addison those first 2 games. Christian Darrisaw wasn't playing at that point. And Ryan Kelly has been dealing with concussion. So he hasn't had a healthy offense playing around him yet. The games where Wentz did have that, Wentz looked serviceable. So while, yeah, it's a little bit of a quarterback hell for them, I think it's more so outside noise of everyone else playing well than it is technical panic on their side. But like I said, if I am a realistic fan, I am at least nervous that the first 2 weeks with McCarthy weren't great. And if it looks like he's going to come back against the Lions, like, I just watched the Lions make Baker Mayfield look just awful. Like, there's no MVP talk anymore with Baker Mayfield based on what the Lions just did to him. And I think you're going to throw McCarthy back into the fire with that. So I don't know. It's going to be tough one way or the other. But then again, if McCarthy comes out and does what Baker Mayfield couldn't, then I think everything's fine and the fire is extinguished and everyone's kumbaya up in Eagan, Minnesota.
What should they have done? And was it possible? I mean, the contrarians are going to go, well, they should have kept Sam Darnold. I think you and I both know that if you draft a quarterback in the first round, you're trying to develop him. You can't just bring back the guy and then sign the guy to a big deal and then have him wait. I know the Packers did it, but that's usually not feasible. Some will say Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones also playing on a team which we now realize is loaded on both sides. Like, when you look back, what would, if you could have done it over? If you could have taken over from um, I'm like a Queefy and also from O'Connell, would you have just not drafted a quarterback at all back then, or should they have just re-sign Daniel Jones, or was it even feasible? Like, when you look back, was there a perfect answer they could have done, or is this just, I don't know, if there wasn't real, perfect answer?
I mean, I think a perfect answer would have been Quessy offering up a boatload. They had 2 first-round picks that year. Um, Doing everything you could to maybe trade up with the Patriots, and obviously the Patriots wanted Drake May. Um, Try to get Drake May. I think May with O'Connell would have been lethal, and obviously May is proving to be good with Mike McDaniel, who I think is an average offensive mind at this point. But hindsight's 2020 on that front. I think the most realistic thing that they could have done is just built a better quarterback room. Like I noticed it where like they stuck with Brett Ripien for a long time, and they traded for Sam Howell in a pretty like nonchalant way. I think they swapped like a fourth for Sam Howell and a fifth in the draft, if I remember right. It wasn't much. Like it was a pretty like, okay, this is like you're drafting a pretty veteran backup essentially with the way the picks traded. And I just think having a better backup situation, like that was the plan when they had signed Sam Darnold to that 1 year, $10 million deal. Like that was them telling everyone, okay, we're going to draft a quarterback because there's no way they're going to stick with Darnold and they're not going to trot Darnold out and everything like that. And I don't think they would have either. I think McCarthy would have started his rookie year if he wouldn't have torn his meniscus because he looked great in the one preseason game against the Raiders. Um, but yeah, I think the way they've built the quarterback room is the issue. They signed Wentz last minute. They saw what they had with Sam Howell and traded him away um, for pennies on the dollar. And I think that's where the issue lies. Like I love Quessy. I think he's a great roster builder. I think his draft is still very hit and miss. Ironically, I think his team has a great eye for UDFA talent, like with Ivan Pace Jr. and Jalen Redmond. But when it comes to drafting players and getting the values and everything, he's still it's very much up in the air, I think. But I still think he's a good GM. Like he can build rosters and that, but he does it more so through trades and free agency. But like I said, I think the way the quarterback room was built was one of his bigger whiffs coming into the year. I don't think Jones would have come back. Jones clearly wanted to go to Indianapolis and start. And Darnold, obviously, Vikings were not going to give him $100 million with McCarthy there. So I think maybe the only thing you could have done was maybe get Rodgers in for a year and have McCarthy sit behind him, but I don't know how much that would have been productive either. So I don't think there's a right door for them to go through in the past other than being really aggressive in the draft and trading up for one of those top guys.
I love Baker Mayfield. I have nicknamed him Baker Big Balls Mayfield. I still think he's an MVP candidate. He's not God. So when you take away Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin, Luke Haggard, Bucky Irvin, now Mike Evans, and other defensive pieces, including guys like Levante David, eventually it catches up. What the hell is going on with the Buccaneers? On paper, they should be doing well, and they are doing pretty well considering. But how does a team get this unlucky outside of the Ravens, where you're almost losing a player a week, and you're basically telling your quarterback, "Yeah, just yeah, your number one wide receiver is now is a 7th round draft pick. Just have fun, Baker. Pull something out your rear end again."
I think it's one of those things where like there was always like, oh hey, injuries happen in the NFL. And this will be my second year covering the Bucs. And last year was very much a okay, there's always something sort of thing. Like ironically, it was a Monday night game where Chris Godwin dislocating his ankle started things going downhill. And then this year, everything was going downhill. And then like Mike Evans with his collarbone and concussion on Monday Night Football was kind of like the peak of like, oh my God, can this get any worse? And I hate to say that out loud, and I'm going to knock on wood as I say that, but like, as you said, Baker Mayfield has been playing out of his mind with a roster that, like, I don't know if anybody else could be doing it the way he has. Like, he's very much dragging this team across the finish line through the first couple weeks of the year. Like he said, They're missing Bucky Irving, their starting running back. They're missing Cooney Mock, they're one of their starting guards. They're also missing Luke Gadecki, their starting right tackle. They're missing their backup guard, Luke Haggard, who was replacing Mock, and they had Graham Barton, their center, playing left tackle because Tristan Wirfs was missing time for a while. And then defensive line, Kalijah Cansey, tore his pec. He's out for the year. Levante David's beaten up and showing like I love Levante David. And it's one of those things where one of my favorite things with my job is getting to cover people that I get to think about and say, I was lucky to watch them. And David is definitely one of those players. But that being said, he is looking every bit of 35 at the linebacker position. So he's slowing down. Zion McCollum's been hurt. Zion McCollum had surgery a week ago and played this week, by the grace of God somehow. And it's one of those things where I don't know if there's teams that are beaten up, but I don't know if anyone else is missing the amount of impact players that this team is. But to your point, Baker is still finding success. Like against the 49ers, it was Cameron Johnson and Tez Johnson who stepped up. And then this week, like I said earlier about the Lions defense, he just was jittery from the start. I don't know what it was with him. Like everything was either high or low. There was no good ball placement the entire night. They abandoned the run game. Like it was just a weird game in general. And that being said, I still don't think the score reflected how badly they played. So it could have been much worse. But in terms of health, I've never seen anything like this where it's just even the backups are getting hurt at this point.
So is it the fault of a strength and conditioning? Is it fault of the head coaching staff? Like, who's to blame? Because this is now becoming like laughable. You're almost going, okay, who else is getting injured next game? Are we losing the kicker? Are we gonna is Baker gonna be healthy for the full 17 games? Or are we gonna lose him? Like at some point, if you're Todd Bowles, it's almost like you're going, okay, sacrificing, a live goat is on the table now, just so I can get the rest of my team healthy. Like, how did it get to this point?
It's funny. One of my writers for Bucks Wire, she has sent every time an injury happens, she sends me the search results of Etsy witches, and she's like, I'm getting this close to investing in one of these. I've made the joke that they need to do the scene from Ted Lasso where everyone goes to midfield at Raymond James Stadium and burns something that means something important to them, because there's something going on. I don't know if it's strength and conditioning, because like in the point of like Evans was a freak thing with a collarbone, like easiest bone to break in the body. Gadecki was a knee injury, so you can kind of point strength and conditioning. Godwin, I think it's a fibula thing, which I think is going back to his ankle from last year. Bucky, I think it was just a knee tweak, so again, strength and conditioning. So I definitely think there has to be some questions being made, and it's not moves that you're ever going to see publicly, where if they do make some changes, you're going to know about it. But you've got to think at some point, like there's too much of this happening for it to be a coincidence. But yeah, like you said, if you're Todd Bowles, something's got to give at some point, and Baker's eventually going to run out of juice, like you saw this Monday night. The Lions just were too much for him, so I think it's something's got to give at some point. I just don't know what for the Bucs.
What does Jason Light do at this point? Because the trade deadline is coming up, and he has to probably go like, okay, do I need a wide receiver? Do I need a guard? Do I need a linebacker? Do I need all three? Do I need a running back as well? Like, because on one hand, you don't want to get rid of all your draft picks, but on the other hand, this is the AFC South looks like it's the Buccaneers. If they win home field advantage, which is still possible right now, if we consider everything that's going on, they could make a run to a Super Bowl. Like if you're Jason Light, do you just bet the farm on this year and go, all right, I'll trade everything, including a first round draft pick, if I can get replacements to come in and fix linebacker, offensive line, wide receiver, maybe running back if Irving doesn't come back, and now I'll throw in another defensive lineman just because who knows, one of our defensemen might get hurt next week.
Yeah, I think it's, and also an injury I didn't even think to mention was Hassan Reddick went down with a knee injury and ankle injury this week too. And MRIs were getting done yesterday, and there hasn't been an update on him yet. Today they have they'll speak to the media and they'll be the first practice report. I don't think he'll practice, but I think if Reddick's going to be out a significant amount of time, I think that might be enough for Jason Light to get aggressive for the first time. Like he's very much, I'm going to trust my draft. My roster building's done in the off season, and to his credit, this team is very well built. Um, they're very deep at running back. They're deep at wide receiver, as they're showing. They're deep at the offensive line because clearly they're going 2-3 deep in some situations and still doing okay. Secondary is pretty deep as well, but yeah, they need something to tip the scales in their favor. Like I've been pounding the table that they in the offseason they should have done it. Now um, I think Joe Flacco kind of put cold water on that situation, but I think getting like a Trey Hendrickson or a Max Crosby, um, getting some form of dominant pass rusher. Maybe now it's a Jalen Phillips from Miami, like we talked about. Maybe he's a little bit cheaper than a first round pick, like the other two would have been. I think if Hassan Reddick's going to miss time, I think that exacerbates things in his mind. Um, I think there's some veteran wide receiver options that could fill in for like Mike Evans. I think they need someone who is bigger or at least plays bigger, maybe like a DeAndre Hopkins, who's just kind of playing filler up in Baltimore. Um, I think getting somebody like him in there opposite of Emeka Buka and Chris Godwin when he comes back, to complement the styles of speed you've got with Tez Johnson and Cameron Johnson. There's definitely some cheaper options where he can part with some day three picks, maybe even some picks uh, in 2027, as we've seen GM start to do, and keep this team very much on the Super Bowl track. Because I think this is a team that I wrote about it this week with Jeff Risner from Lions Wire. I said, I think the Bucs and the Lions are the two best teams in the NFC, and I think they should be in the NFC title game again. And I think if everyone's healthy, I think the Bucs win that game. It's just one of those things where if they can get to that point, is going to be another question, but that's going to be entirely up to Jason Light, if the roster is going to be able to survive up to that point.
Finally, we got to talk about Tennessee Titans, and they have now gone through, I can't believe I'm saying this here, 4 different GMs. They're on their 4th right now, 3 different coaches in a span of literally 4 years now. This is getting Raiders like incompetence. So the good news is Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker are not hiring a coaching search, so I guess that's good news. How do they fix this though? I mean, because right now you got to think, when they're going in, the first thing any good offense coordinator, head coaching candidate, defense coordinator is going to look and ask is Amy Adams going to fire me after maybe a year? You guys after a year, because that's all she seems to want to do is hire people and fire people.
Yeah, and I think that's going to obviously, like you said, push away some candidates. Like a lot of people have talked about Joe Brady taking that job or getting offered it. Um, Joe Brady went to Carolina with Matt Rule and saw how quickly things can change there. And he was in Buffalo and got to see Ken Dorsey get fired for him to be promoted. So like he knows the harsh realities of the NFL. And obviously he's in a very safe spot coaching an offense that is led by Josh Allen. I don't think his job security could be any higher. So to go from there to Tennessee, while obviously there's only 32 jobs, to lead an NFL franchise, I think leaving such a secure spot is going to be tough for him. I think it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be a guy that I don't want to say they take a chance on because I don't think they're going to want to, but I think it's going to be more fitting for a veteran to come along who wants, I don't want to say wants to get back into coaching, but maybe wants to stay in coaching. Like I've heard John Harbaugh, in case he runs out of favor in Baltimore, would be the home run hire. I don't think Mike McCarthy's a horrible hire either if they want to get an offensive mind in there for Cam Ward. Um, I think that's what they need to focus on at least is getting somebody who has play calling experience that Brian Callahan didn't have because Zach Taylor did that in Cincinnati. Um, and I think if you get somebody like a John Harbaugh in who can build a staff out, or a Mike McCarthy who can also build a staff out, but also has the play calling experience, I think that's where the fit is more for Tennessee. Is they're going to need a veteran presence in terms of coaching that can handle the chaos that's going to happen. And if you want to talk about dealing with chaos, um, McCarthy coming from dealing with Dallas and Jerry Jones, I think anything else is going to seem like a cakewalk at that point.
Again, like I was thinking to think about this because right now the rumor mill is, oh, you know what, they're going to go after Matt Nagy. Oh, but you know what, they're going to go after, as you said, Joe Brady. Oh, they're going to go after Mike McCarthy. There'll be more jobs open, and as you said, if you're Mike McCarthy, if you're Nagy, if you are Joe Brady, you know, hey, I'm going to have suitors. That Miami Dolphins job, hey, you know, they're more patient. I'll go there first. Or, hey, you know, the Giants job might be opening up, and I'm not an a-hole like Brian Daboll, so I'll go there. It's more almost safe. So again, if you could this be a scenario where you're looking at, oh, it's Josh McDaniels, come on down because their team's just like probably if the Raiders let go Pete Carroll, that they're going to look at this and go, wait a minute, Amy Adams, Bruce Davis. Is there any difference? One's a man, one's a woman. They both love firing people. Like, if you're Brinker and Bergonzi, how tough is it going to be to get Amy to go, look, you have to give these guys at least 3 years. This organization right now is just literally a dumpster fire.
I think the Bergonzi aspect of it all is going to be the one silver lining in their whole hiring process because I think he's well respected around the NFL. Obviously, was in Kansas City for a while, you know, and helped build that roster up to being what it is, and got to see how to be active and go from the quarterback out and everything like that. Um, you mentioned Arthur Smith and Matt Nagy. I can't think of like when I said veteran coaches, I feel like it's one of those things where they're going to interview a bunch of like home run potential hires, and then we're all going to get the ESPN alert of they hired one of those two guys because I think, like you said, it's going to be one of those things where neither one of them have anything to lose because they know they can eventually go back and just join another coaching staff. Um, and they want to get back into the coaching ranks of it. And obviously, Nagy in Chicago didn't work out great. And Smith in Atlanta didn't work out great either. Um, yeah, I couldn't think of two worse.
Oh, I could. Josh McDaniels. He might
I
be
mean, yeah,
the
that too. I
coach
guess
because,
three.
as you said, if you're Nagy, you won Chicago. Right now, you look like a good candidate compared to some of these guys out there. Like, you know, Flores sometimes has a hard time getting along with people, let's just say. Oh, he's also still suing the league. That's going to be nice. You know, Mike McCarthy's a bit older of it too. So how many teams want to have a coach who might be near retirement age? Like, there's not many good candidates. And so when they look at this job, I mean, you and I both know they're going to look at Tennessee and go, oh my God, this is like Chernobyl. This is bad. I don't want
Yeah,
to go here.
and to your point, real quick, I think Flores, once somebody finally gets the guts to hire him, I think they'll be very happy. I think everything's been a learning experience with him. He's been great in Minnesota, and he's on an expiring contract, so I don't know how that's going to fit out there. But back to Tennessee, yeah, I think like I said, they're just going to end up with somebody that is going to be underwhelming. I think it's going to be tough on Cam Ward, which stinks. I think Cam Ward's shown flashes for as much as you want to see out of a rookie quarterback. I mean, look how long Bryce Young's finally playing good football. And beginning of the year, I was out on him after the first couple of weeks. I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. Dave Canales needs to be fired and everything like that. And once you get their system in place, they started running the ball more. Rico became one of the leading rushers in the NFL. I don't think anybody saw. That's the biggest thing in Tennessee is they're not helping Cam Ward. And I think if they get a head coach in place to do that, get the running game back into place, get him another big receiver. Alec Manor can only do so much. Um, the roster's not great, but Morganzi's only been there for a short time, so you got to give him time too. But you've got to get the right coach to maximize everything, and any of those three guys are not going to do that. But like we said, I don't know who's going to be willing to leave a comfortable spot to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna be the guy to make the changes. I'm gonna be the one who fixes things, and they very quickly could realize, oh crap, I made a mistake. So it's tough. It's funny. You wouldn't think Tennessee's like one of the worst spots to be in, but they are one of the worst spots to be in if you're looking for a head coaching job.
Well, we unfortunately this is all the time we have with this gentleman, so we got to let him go. But once again, I am proud to have here helping us talk some football, dropping some knowledge, and letting us know what exactly is going on around the league. I give you it is, as we said before, he is one of the best NFL reporters in the business. You just don't know it yet. I give you lead writer and managing editor of Bucs and Vikings at USA Today. I give you it's Andrew Harbaugh. So Andrew, where can fans check you out at? Where is the Twitter? The Substack, the Facebook. Where can fans check out your work?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at Andrew NFL. My Substack's linked on my Twitter profile. It's Prototypes and Outliers. Try to get out 3 a week on there. So sometimes it's 2 a week, depending on how busy Sundays get. So yeah, no, it's all sorts of fun. Timeline's mostly Bucks and draft content. So basketball starting back up, you might get some Cavs stuff in there and Caps whenever Ovechkin does something good, but for the most part, it's football. So
Andrew Harbaugh, ladies and gentlemen, once again, always honor and pleasure having you on the show. We come back, a lot more going on here, only on it's Last Call. Last Call, the alcohol, only on the lastcallpodcast.com.